Have you ever loved someone so deeply that when they are gone, a part of you died too? Imagine waiting for them to walk through the door one more time. Imagine hearing their name and feeling your heart break all over again. This is not just a poem about death. It is a poem about the unbearable silence that follows loss. A story of a young woman whose lover was taken from her in an instant.
And will you cut a stone for him to set above his head? And will you cut a stone for him? A stone for him, she said. 3 days before, a splintered rock had struck her lover dead, had struck him in the quarry dead, where, careless of a warning call, he loitered while the shot was fired. A lively stripling, brave and tall, and sure of all his great desired. A flash, a shock, a rumbling fall, and broken 'neath the broken rock, a lifeless heap with face of clay, with eyes that saw the end of all. I went to break the news to her, and I could hear my own heartbeat.
With dread of what my lip may say. But some poor fool had sped before, and flinging wide her father's door, had blotted out the news to her, had struck her lover dead for her, had struck the girl's heart dead in her, had struck life lifeless. At a word, and dropped it at her feet, then hurried on his witless way. Scarce knowing she had heard, and when I came, she stood alone, a woman turned to stone. And though no word at all she said, I knew that all was known, because her heart was dead. She did not sigh nor moan. His mother wept, she could not weep. Her lover slept, she could not sleep. 3 days, 3 nights, she did not stir. 3 days, 3 nights were one to her, who never closed her eyes, from sunset to sunrise, from dawn to eventful, tireless staring eyes, that seeing not saw all. The 4th night, when I came from work, I found her at my door. And will you cut a stone for him? She said, and spoke no more, but followed me as I went in, and sank upon a chair, and fixed her grey eyes on my face, with still uneasy stare. And as she waited patiently, I could not bear to feel those still grey eyes that followed me, those eyes that plucked the heart from me, those eyes that sucked the breath from me, and curdled the warm blood in me, those eyes that cut me to the bone, and cut my marrow like cold steel. And so I rose and sought a stone, and cut it smooth and square. And as I walked, she sat and watched beside me in her chair, night after night, by candlelight. I caught her lover's name, night after night, so still and white, and like a ghost she came and sat beside me in her chair and watched with eyes aflame. She eyed each stroke and hardly stirred. She never spoke a single word, and not a sound or murmur broke the quiet save the malice stroke. With still eyes ever on my hand, with eyes that seemed to burn my hands, my wincing overwearied hand, she watched with bloodless lip apart, and silent indrawn breath, and every stroke my chisel cut, death cut still deeper in her heart. The 2 of us were chiseling together, I and death. And when at length my job was done, and I had laid the mallet by, as if at last her peace were won, she breathed his name, and with a sigh, passed slowly through the open door, and never crossed my threshold more. Next night, I labored late, alone, to cut her name upon the stone. This one begins with a lady asking the stone cutter to make a gravestone for her dead lover. I'm sure that you know that that title, the stone, means a gravestone. That is the stone that is put at the edge of a grave, right? And this is it just shows that she's basically heartbroken. The young man, however, took us back to how the lover died. Apparently, they were both working at a quarry site where they break stone into pieces, and the dead lover ignored a warning call and stayed too close, to an explosion. They use, because of the magnitude of the rock, they use explosion to like break it apart, before they start to break it into tiny pieces. So he didn't hit the core. He stayed close to the explosion, and when the rock opened due to the explosion, a large one fell upon him and he died immediately. Now, this stone cutter decide to, okay, well, this is my colleague and I know where he lives. Let me go and break the sad news to his family. Okay, but unfortunately, someone that did not send message had gone ahead of him and had broken the news just shabbily like that. That is why you are art student, right? Because if you are considerate enough, you would know that euphemism should come in place here, right? Just imagine that the man comes and say, "Hey, your lover is dead, oh, hey, there was an explosion." The shock obviously was too much for this lady to bear. But as an art student that knows euphemism, you rather go there and break the news by telling them that, oh, this man had just kicked the bucket. If you say he kicked the bucket, before it dawned on them, the impact would not be as much as, breaking it, like that. So all of the whatever that this man had brought with him, it was no use because someone had broken it, and the way the person had broken the news had left the girl shattered. So when the speaker, saw the girl standing, stiffly, he automatically knew that, oh, this person had been, had heard the sad news. And we see turned to stone, which means that she's now frozen with sadness and shock. She didn't say anything, but the speaker can tell that she already knows and she heard everything. And this just shows that shock can actually make people feel very, very emotionless. Like, people grieve differently, yeah? There are some people that you expect that their immediate action should be cry, wailing, throwing yourself on the floor like that. But there's some people that they find it very hard to accept the truth, And so while others are openly showing their grief, they bottle it inside, and that is even deadly. This is the same as this girl, okay? She had been turned to stone due to the grief, the extent of the grief. So this babe, this lover, she couldn't cry, she couldn't sleep, she couldn't react like other people. Her grief was magnanimous, like it was obvious. The mother cried, she didn't. Okay, they were crying, she didn't. She couldn't sleep. That shows that she feels that tears is not even enough to show the extent of her grief. She feels tears is too minute, right? To show it. And so she just spends days and nights awake without moving, without sleeping. Okay? And we see her staring into space day and night. And so after the fourth day, she decided to go and see the cutter. Okay? And then she asked her, please, can you cut a stone for him? At least let me have a closure so that at least I can know that yes, he had been buried properly, right? Obviously she was emotionally broken by this, okay? And so the speaker, the poet persona, described how she was just following him about with her eyes. And so much that he became uncomfortable that even if you don't want to cut the stone, you don't have a choice than to cut the stone. Because from the poem says that, of course, you know that eyes cannot suck breath from him, right? But that's just an exaggerated way of saying that she's very, very sad. Okay? And so we see this cutter, we see this speaker as he starts to carve the gravestone because he doesn't have a choice, like I've said earlier. Okay? And the lady sitting beside him every night as this speaker is chiseling the name, she's intently watching every of his movements. And like a ghost, she came. She looks very pale, very weak, just like ghost, right? So what the lover is actually living on now is the memory. And so it's just like, let me have something to show that this my lover was once real. And so she eyed each stroke. Okay? And so every time the speaker cuts the gravestone, even though he's cutting it physically, but death is cutting deep and deeper into the lover's heart, that is the lady's heart. And so the speaker said, together, I and death. Okay? Because it feels like he and death are walking side by side. This person has not said any word, looks very, very like a ghost already. Okay? And so he compared that to death. Okay? And he says, as if at last her peace were won. Okay? Now, of course, this was when the gravestone, okay, was finished. The girl, seeing her lover's name, mouth the word softly, said that particular name, and she walked out the door and never returned. She didn't come back. Okay, so at first you will think, if you didn't go further, you'll think, okay, she's found closure. Okay, now her husband can be properly buried with an identity. Okay, and you feel that, okay, maybe now she'll start to come out from her grief. But sadly, the next night, the speaker again started cutting the stone, putting her name on the stone. So the ending is so shocking that even the stone cutter did not even have a day to rest from the labor that he has been for some days now. Okay, so it just shows that her heartbreak, or the level of her heartbreak and the grief, was just too much for her. It took the best of her. It took the best of her, right? She was alive, but she wasn't really alive. But then it took her completely. And there's just some people we have some people like that they can't survive if their husband dies or if their wife dies. And at least I've heard of old people, okay, that die like days apart because they are so in love with each other, even at old age, that they couldn't even withstand having to live without the other. And so this is as deep as this girl's love. And she was so engrossed in that grief so much that she chose to die alongside her lover. And this brings us to the end of the analysis of the stone. For the theme, we have the theme of love. This permeates through the poem. The love is so strong, so much that the lover couldn't bear to live whilst her lover was in the grave. And so she decided to go meet him there, and they continue their love story. We have the theme of death. And of course, this runs through the poem, from the death of the lover at the quarry site to the death of the girl. Okay? In fact, even before the lady died, she was already dead. Okay? So, as soon as she heard the news, she was dead. No emotions, no sleep, no nothing. She was compared to a ghost. Okay? By the the by the stone cutter. So we see death, okay, taking both of them, and then finally we see theme of grief and heartbreak. And of course, when you talk about this particular theme, you are basically talking about the whole poem from the beginning to the end. I hope that you find this poem helpful, and till I come your way next video, bye for now.